Hello, dear friends. We're sincerely happy to welcome you again. And today we're going to talk to the esteemed Igor Mikhailovich Danilov.
Greetings.
Igor Mikhailovich, in the previous video, we talked about the fact that when a person encounters glimpses of contact with the spiritual world, with this living response from the spiritual world in his practices, when he indeed begins to get real pleasure from performing the practice and coming in touch with the spiritual world, then consciousness becomes scared. Because if a person encounters the fruits of the Holy Spirit, consciousness has nothing to offer the person. Consciousness has no alternatives for him then. And of course, the demon is strong as long as a person doesn't have this experience yet. In this case, it can easily drive a person away from the spiritual path and lead him astray. But in spiritual practices, people still say that, yes, it seems that first you perform these practices intuitively. You understand that, indeed, there is something important in it. There is something very valuable for you, but there is nothing to lean on yet. So they asked the following questions. If a person doesn't yet have this kind of stable experience through feelings, experience of living with the spiritual world, and the person is certainly unstable in performing spiritual practices, how to persuade oneself, how to persuade even one's consciousness, how to motivate it to perform spiritual practices regularly on a daily basis?
Well, it is difficult to motivate consciousness, but when you yourself feel that they are necessary, of course, you should realize, first of all, the importance of practices themselves. But there is one point here, that in the beginning, and sometimes it can be quite prolonged for some people, if they are often distracted, if they do not take the practices seriously, then consciousness interferes in this process anyway. And whether you like it or not, at the first stages, a person still needs to discipline himself. Let's consider sports, for example, okay? A person wants to attain a result. For instance, he goes into sports to become an athlete, to win top prizes in a serious, mature way. So what is necessary? It is necessary to practice with full commitment in order to achieve certain results, right?
Yes, right. And with discipline.
After all, in the beginning, training will be extremely difficult. But afterwards, yes, although I'll put it this way, in the big sports, it is difficult even afterwards. Or if we take something trivial, a person watches his figure, right? He wants to get into shape, to build up some muscles, if it's a man, or to get fit, if it's a woman. What do? They go to the gym to correct their body, right? After all, it's a workout that causes pain after exercises. It is hard. A person spends a lot of time on that, but there is a goal to correct one's figure. The athlete has a goal to achieve a certain result. Again, let's not take sports. Let's take a person who wants to learn a foreign language, for example. It is difficult for him, but he has set himself a goal to learn not only to understand and speak, but to write correctly in a difficult foreign language. How much time does he have to spend on it? After all, consciousness doesn't want to do that.
Right.
It resists. Consciousness doesn't want to do sports. Consciousness doesn't want to learn a language. But if a person needs it, then again, he motivates himself by the subsequent result. It is the same with spiritual practices. In any case, if a person feels that he is able to gain life and that he really needs it, then naturally, in the beginning, until he breaks free from the control of consciousness and is able to live as personality, here you need to do your best, of course. Then naturally, it is necessary to make an effort. Consciousness will not want to perform practices. It will dissuade. It will find 1,001 reasons to spend 5 minutes on the practice. Well, sit for 5 minutes and perform the practice, or read a prayer, or something else, depending on the path a person follows. But at the same time, it will mislead, it will interfere in the person's prayer, it will interfere with its advice in the spiritual practice as well. Until a person gets rid of that advice, he will not understand the essence of these practices, but that's only in the beginning. Afterwards, when a person receives a living response from the spiritual world, if he performs practices correctly, if this is really his goal, then what he receives, even at the first responses, compensates for all of his efforts. And at this point, a person begins to understand that he can really attain life, and that this is true. There is no other way. That is, in any case, it will be necessary to pass through to overcome this Satan.
As you once said, yes, at first it is painful and muscles hurt.
Of course.
Like in sports, that is, consciousness doesn't want to go there, and then it already hurts when you don't go, right?
There is soreness, and it takes time. But later on, when you get into the process, you can no longer do without it, even in sports, because you feel lighter and better after you exercise. And in spiritual practices, here again, a person doesn't just feel better afterwards. Later, after the practice, yes, there is an uplift, there is an inspiration, but the most wonderful thing is the practice. It is the best thing that can happen to a person. This is really so. Remember one thing, friends. It's a problem to be with God only when you are in an embrace with Satan. Only then, the very path to the spiritual world is a problem for you because you are hugging Satan tightly. Remember one more thing, friends. Satan has no arms, and he cannot hold you. He only holds you with an illusion in your head, merely in the head. In your head. When he reigns, he is able to keep you from life. However, you are able to make a choice at any moment to turn away from Satan and open your heart to the Spirit of God, to feel Him and accept Him with all your heart. And then no Satan will be able to have power over you. This is simple. There just has to be a goal. And whatever you want in this world, in this material world, should have no value whatsoever compared to your goal. Then, friends, you will succeed. And here, it is extremely important to train your own consciousness and to understand this yourself as personality, that you have to treat practice as a prospect of your future. If today you haven't done practices and you haven't done them properly, tomorrow you may find yourself on the sidelines of life and you will be the only one to blame, not Satan who whispers in your head and says that you are tired, that you need to rest, that you will perform tomorrow with more diligence. He's only telling you. But it is you who makes the choice, my friend, and by your choice you will either have the sidelines of life or life eternal. Look how simple everything is, and how fair everything is. Even God Himself cannot force you to enter heaven if you choose hell. But no devil can keep you on the way to hell if you seek God. Any shaitan will be powerless if you are truly faithful to God, if you strive for love, for joy and life, if you feel love for the spiritual world within you. And this is the highest justice. Here, you yourself are the judge, the defendant, the executioner, and the victim. Everything is in your hands, friends, in your choice. It is all very simple and very honest.
What we have today is already the consequence of our accumulated experience, of what we chose in the past, and precisely here and now.
Absolutely right. So I encourage everyone, friends, sit down and take a responsible look at what you have and what will remain with you, and where will you be based on the present day. All that you have is not yours. Will you be able, very soon, literally in a moment, to take what you have with you, or at least anything of what you have? You won't. Another question. Literally, in one moment, Based on the present day, where will you be? Will you be in eternal bliss? Or will you go down for many, many years? And this is the result of yesterday, what you have today. Yes, some people boast that they have achieved something in this world, some understanding, some knowledge, some results. But what will happen to that in a moment if you did not embark on the spiritual path yesterday? If yesterday you did not attain God's love, then with what and where will you arrive tomorrow based on the present day? Here is the answer. Everything is very simple. If today we strive for God's love, if today we want to become part of this spiritual world, and we make every effort to do so, then tomorrow will become eternity for us. If today we strive for some material values, much more than for God's love, if we strive for some earthly things much more than for God's love, then tomorrow, in the struggle for that dust, we will become dust. And that is our choice. Nothing on earth may be compared to the state of this interaction, the exchange of this, as we say, love. There is no other way to call it, with the spiritual world. When you hear a living response of the spiritual world, you become filled with it. You understand that you are part of the eternal, infinite world. You feel the power and the might of the spiritual world itself. You understand that this is eternity, and you understand how beautiful it is. But in order to come to that, you certainly have to struggle a little bit. But here again, if we take the religious aspect, people pray, follow the covenants, all the instructions, everything is as it should be. They walk the spiritual path through religion. Then of course, they face the same problems.
Yes, exactly.
And it is extremely difficult to come to this answer anyway.
Right. When there are no results yet, one doesn't feel.
Yes, but a lot of other problems arise. Too much is spent on theatrics, on empty actions, which in reality have zero significance. You know, it's like in science. This is really so. Science is basically all simple and straightforward, but everyone wants to bring something of their own and complicates the process. Subsequently, we get a very complex product, which is hard to understand, and it is ineffective. The same as in religions. There is a lot of unnecessary and confusing stuff. It is especially problematic when, excuse me friends, but this is true. Religions give instructions on what to do, how to do it, how many times to do it, in what image, in what clothing, where, and so forth. And all these orders and instructions were written by people who were far from the spiritual world, by those who never had a spiritual response within themselves. It is all written from the mind, and it is all actually written by the demon. So it turns out, to be sort of like running hurdles during morning exercises. It's hard. A person gets distracted by some trifle, commotion, something that he needs to do, to light up or put something somewhere. There are a lot of religions, and there are a lot of problems of this kind in them. Sort of magic and ritualism begins. Yet, there is nothing external you can do that would contribute to your spiritual growth. Whatever you do externally, I mean the attributes, the place you are in, or anything else, how will it affect you? Well, when you are in a circle of like-minded people, you're striving together, and it doesn't matter where, in what building, or even at a distance, but if you are in sync, it enhances everyone. Isn't that so?
Yes, exactly.
It is.
You've touched upon religious services, and many people consider it to be their feat, that they have stood through a service. And in spiritual practices as well, you notice that people understand that there is a timing of some kind, 30 minutes of spiritual practice.
You know, I'll tell you more simply. You've just said that people consider it to be their feat, that they have stood through a service. If you come with a demon in your head to that very church service, and you're standing there just to stand, just for the sake of appearance, without an inner impulse, without an ultimate goal, or even worse, with a material desire. In other words, you come for magic and not for God's love, then it is hard. Then you come back from church exhausted, robbed, and so on. But I'll tell you this, if you are going to God and you have a moment to perform a practice, real practice, then even in hell, while surrounded by demons, devils, and shaitans, you will come in contact with the spiritual world. And for you, no matter how long it takes, it will pass like an instant. Well, this is true. Even when performing a practice, I will put it simply. A person sits down, consciousness is distracting him. For a whole hour, he is trying to tune himself.
Right.
And he receives a response. A response from the spiritual world, even for a few seconds. And that makes up for everything. Those few seconds, in the timelessness, it can be understood only by the one who encountered it and who is able to experience it. Thank God, there are a lot of such people nowadays, and there are more and more of them, and this is wonderful. When for a few seconds, in our earthly understanding, you come into contact with the spiritual world, in which there is no time at all, this gives such an uplift. And no matter what sorrows and what problems you have in this world, no matter how demons try to attack you here, as they say, to bully and torment you, even when the whole world is in ruins, your personal world, when everything is rolling, as they say, off a cliff, everything is falling apart. But once you get into spiritual practice and come into contact with the spiritual world, you realize how ridiculous and how stupid all this is. All our fuss, all our worries from demons, when they begin to manipulate a person, to create problems for him, force him to worry about empty things, make special huge tragedies for him, literally out of nothing. After all, it all passes anyway. Whatever happens here, whatever trouble befalls a person in this world, and no matter how this trouble is inflated and supported by those very demons, no matter how they impose all these problems on you, everything passes, and it passes very quickly, just like the entire human life. After all, human life is a very short instant, and it slips by very, very quickly. It is difficult to notice this in childhood, when you strive to grow up as soon as possible, so that new opportunities open up for you, and then time seems to pass slowly. But once you grow up, my friend, and look back at how your childhood flew by, where your youth disappeared to, and where you are now, is the point at which you can do a lot. It is very important. It's important to work now and here, to work on gaining life, truly and for real. As long as you are alive, my friend, you can do it, because what you are doing today may open the gate of heaven for you tomorrow. But if you don't do it today, you will come to a closed gate tomorrow too. This is an axiom, and it has to be understood. If you want to achieve any results in sports, you have to practice every day. You have to make an effort and strive to win. If you want to improve your figure, you have to exercise. Then you will see results. If you want to learn a foreign language, you have to practice it every day. And if you want to learn it faster, you have to work as hard as you can every day. If you don't learn a single word today, you won't know it tomorrow. Thus, in order to achieve a result, You have to try hard every day. So today is the guarantee of your future tomorrow. And if your consciousness resists and says, too many problems, or I'm just too lazy, or something else, and you listen to it, then how can you experience that joy, reach this merging with the spiritual world and become a part of it? And can you even feel God's love at all? The meaning of our existence here. If we do not feel God's love, we live as beasts. And when we live as beasts, we hate each other. We seek only to satisfy our own egoism. We try to make a place for ourselves in this world. We try to become superior and better. We struggle. We fight for life. You shouldn't fight for life. You should live. You should fight for the right to live. That's what you should fight for. And you shouldn't pay attention to any obstacles. If a demon puts them in front of you, you can overcome them. If you really aspire to God, there are no obstacles for a human's personality which he cannot step over and enter God's paradise, except one, which is the service to Satan. If you, my friend, serve Satan, that's your choice. Then do not blame God and do not call him cruel, because he has given you the right to choose. And serving Satan doesn't mean going and killing everyone and so on. It's enough just to hate someone or to hold a grudge like a rock that drags you down to the very bottom of that very hell. A human has no one to hold a grudge against and nothing to be offended about. A human is unable to hate anyone. It is demons who hate. In a human, as an angel, there can exist only love and sorrow. Actually, sorrow for the lost opportunities of other angels. When you understand how easy it is to love God, how pleasant it is when the spiritual world loves you, when you are a part of it, and you feel that there is the one who is eternal in this mortal body, which is devoured by time, then everything else turns into dust. And then other opportunities unfold before a person, but also a different responsibility. But that's already another story. Thank you, friends. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Igor Mikhailovich.
Let's just love each other. Strive for God and live the way an angel should live. Peace be with you.